Today we're going to be talking about problematic social media use, results from a large-scale, nationally representative adolescent sample. For an introduction, social media as we know it is one of the most popular leisure activities among adolescents and includes sites like Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. According to the authors, problematic social media use is more difficult to define given its conceptual confusion surrounding what exactly classifies as problematic. When the DSM-5 was being put together, there was a lot of speculation on whether or not internet use disorder would be included. However, ultimately, only internet gaming addiction was included. The theoretical model of this study, the biopsychosocial model, includes symptoms such as mood modification, salience, tolerance, withdrawal symptoms, conflict, and relapse. This model is what the researchers based a lot of their theory on when looking at adapting these concepts to social media addiction. For mood modification, it includes excessive social media use leading to specific changes in mood states. This can be seen in checking constantly for likes and comments or views and being upset and irritable about them by the minute. It also includes salience, which is total preoccupation with social media use, tolerance, which is increasing amounts of time using social media, withdrawal symptoms, which are negative feelings and psychological symptoms such as irritability or anxiety when social media use is restricted, which could be experienced at a movie or on a date or on vacation with parents with no reception, etc. Conflict, which includes interpersonal problems as a direct result of social media usage. We see this typically when on social media when a boyfriend or significant other likes another person's Instagram or comments on them, or when friends Snapchat their hangout and don't invite you. We also see this in relapse, which is returning to excessive social media use after a period of abstinence. For example, Lent just ended and a lot of people give it up for Lent. For the literature review, there are considerable gaps in research regarding reliable assessment of social media use. Social media users do not stick to only one form of social media, though Facebook is the most popular, there are others being used simultaneously. And some report higher prevalence in females over males and report differences in prevalence due to cultural factors. Because it's difficult to operationally define excessive or addictive social media use, it's difficult to develop, obtain, or implement assessment tools that will be universal or relevant with the frequent change of social media. For the prevalence in females over males, it can be flawed because analyzing those reports in the literature found that women were overrepresented in the samples and were more willing to participate than their male counterparts. Another thing to consider is that in Chinese, Australian, Nigerian, and Dutch studies, adolescence prevalence differed in terms of the collectivistic and individualistic cultural values. The purpose of this study is to test the psychometric properties of the Bergen Social Media Addiction Scale using a nationally representative Hungarian adolescent sample. It's important to note early on that while the topic is interesting, it has the potential to have high external validity and generalizability. It is necessary to take into account that Hungarian cultural factors and values may affect the influence and outcomes. The second goal of this study is to assess the prevalence of problematic social media use in a nationally representative adolescent sample. The method. Data was collected on March 2015 as part of the European School Survey Project on alcohol and other drugs. The sample was taken at two different grades as listed as 9th and 10th grade, each group proportionate to the target population, which is 16-year-olds. The variables to ensure representativeness are region, grade, type of class, and the region can be defined as Central, Western, Eastern Hungarian. The grades, as mentioned earlier, were 9th and 10th, and the type of class was the actual class that the study was going to be conducted in, which was secondary general, secondary vocational, and vocational classes. The data was collected anonymously by research assistants, and the sample size was 5,961, which is 89.45% of the total sample. This number came from removing all certain extraneous variables, such as incomplete or inconsistent participant data, and also removed participants that do not use the internet and or any social media. Measures. There are socio-demographic questions included in the study. These questions included gender, age, grade, and residence. Another measure used was weekly social media use. In the last 7 days, how many days did you use the internet for social networking? In the last 30 days, on an average day, how many hours did you use the internet for social networking? As mentioned previously, the Bergen Social Media Addiction Scale included 6 items for this study, and it was adapted from the Facebook Addiction Scale that looked specifically at Facebook, contained 18 items, and had items looking at questions regarding multiple factors of addiction. Something to consider is that the BFAS, the Bergen Facebook Addiction Scale, was translated to Hungarian and back, which could affect the reliability. And the adaptation for this study only contained 6 items, which may not prove a strong internal validity. Another measure was the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale, which was also translated to Hungarian, but it was used to give a baseline for the sample. The Center of Epidemiological Studies Depression Scale was also used as a short form to assess but not diagnose depressive symptoms. Statistical analyses. Latent profile analysis to identify groups of people based on scores given on the 6 items of the social media addiction scale. Latent profile analysis is a mixture modeling technique to identify groups of people according to their responses to certain continuous variables, which in this case would be the scores given on the 6 items of the social media scale. A chi-square test of mean equality was used to test the construct validity of the social media addiction scale. All statistical analyses were conducted on SPSS. Results. Through descriptive statistics and analyses, the results were that those who reported using social media, approximately half were male. The age range ranged from 15 to 22. The mean number of hours using social media was found to be 23.16 hours a week, and there was a higher prevalence in females, which is consistent with the literature review. Another point to consider as we critically look at each aspect of the study is that while the target population was 16-year-olds, the range was much larger than that. Though the mean age fell within the target population, there are unanswered questions and wonderings as to whether or not age plays a factor into the use of social media. Along with that, it's important to consider and wonder where on the age range the genders fell, that while the sample ended up being half male and female, the distribution may affect the results. Another part of the results is a confirmatory factor analysis. Looking at the components mentioned earlier, salience, tolerance, mood modification, relapse, withdrawal, and conflict, loadings were found to be above the recommended threshold, meaning the scores reported showed these factors to increase with social media use. Latent profile analysis showed that there was 3 categories. No risk represented the majority of the social media users, had the lowest score on the social media addiction scale. Low risk of problematic use was only 15.5%, and then at risk was problematic social media users and only 4.1% of the population. They found when looking at these factors that withdrawal and tolerance were the highest dimensions, and that the participants reported that they were likely to be female, spent more than 30 hours a week on social media, and also scored lower on the self-esteem scale and higher on the depression scale. All of this means nothing if the psychometric properties of the social media scale are not tested. As I mentioned earlier, because it was adapted and also translated, it might not have an internal validity. But after the researchers tested this, it was demonstrated to have adequate psychometric properties regarding specifically its factor structure, reliability, and validity. Previous research showed a wide range of prevalence due to the various methodological issues. This study presents more conservative prevalence given the larger sample size. They thought that the methodical issues primarily included convenience sampling and primarily targeted college students. And though both males and females use the internet and experience its potential for addiction, the sources may be different. A study done by Rabine suggested that the higher prevalence among women may be due to their use of social media, whereas men reported their addiction due to pornography. Withdrawal symptoms should be highlighted when developing prevention and treatment programs in school environments for adolescents because they were the highest results scored on the BSMAS. As I mentioned earlier, there are limitations. The study only includes Hungarian adolescent groups and may neglect or emphasize cultural factors that influence the use of social media. We've talked and read a bit on self-report biases, which are when results may be skewed when the participants report their behavior because they may not be willing to admit the truth, have difficulty remembering past events, or want to report more favorable behaviors. For future research, researchers should apply longitudinal studies to identify the contributing factors of the problematic behavior among social media users, where in this study it was only assessment. And there should also be clear instructions on the intention and desired use of the social media addiction scale because the participants will then understand what its purpose is for, and there would be an increased reliability. In conclusion, the Bergen Social Media Addiction Scale is psychometrically valid and is an appropriate tool to identify the signs of risky social media use among adolescents. This sample demonstrated that the rates of social media addiction are lower than we think. There is a higher prevalence among females and males, and there are links to higher levels of depression and lower self-esteem. Thank you.